going to show you how to do the circular tubular cast on for 1x1 rib in the round. So those are a lot of pieces. You would use this, it gives you, like, this is the brim of a hat. You can see it is super stretchy, and you really want a beautiful cast on because this is the brim of the hat is right near your face, like right above your eyebrows where everyone will see. And this one is amazing. You can see it's just like it starts from nothing. It just rolls from one side right into the other. And then this is the 1x1 rib where the purl kind of disappears back in there. So you've got a knit stitch, knit row, column, knit column, purl column. We stretch it out, you can see that. But it just creates a really lovely cast on. Admittedly, there are a lot of steps. It takes 6 whole rows of knitting to end up with 2 rows of cast on. You end up with just this little bit. And halfway through, I always kind of feel like it's not working and it's all going to fall apart. And then at the end, it comes together and it's beautiful and I love it. So I'm going to show you the steps now. What you'll need to do this cast on is you'll need some scrap yarn in a smooth yarn, ideally in a contrasting color to your project yarn. You'll need your project yarn, a crochet hook for the Provisional cast on. This circular needle is the one I'm going to use for my project. I'm making a hat, so I have a 16-inch circular needle. And then I also am going to have one straight needle to get started. You could also do this with another long circular needle, no problem. I'm going to use this one, and you'll notice it's in a significantly bigger size than what I'm using for my project. The size is not important, but you'll see in a minute, it's helpful to have a little bit of extra give and space in your initial cast on step. So that's why I'm using that needle. The very first step then is to just tie a simple knot at the end of your cast on, of your scrap yarn. And we're going to do that because later we'll take out the scrap yarn and we're going to remember not to start with the knot end. Go a little bit up from your knot and just make a regular slip knot and put that over your crochet hook. Now you're going to just crochet a few stitches, few chains. If you're not a crocheter, you simply wrap the yarn counterclockwise around the crochet hook and pull it through. Wrap around, pull it through. You just need a few, the number's not important. Now you have your crochet hook lined up. You're going to lay your knitting needle, this is your kind of cast on setup needle, you're going to lay that on top of your working yarn. And then, whoops, you're going to reach across the needle with your crochet hook to get yarn, pull it through. So you'll see we made one cast on stitch. Now you pull the yarn back behind the knitting needle, put the crochet hook over the knitting needle, get yarn and pull it through. You keep doing that. Pull the yarn back behind, the crochet hook goes over so you can get yarn, pull it through. In this provisional cast on, when we're setting up the tubular 1x1 rib, you want to cast on half as many stitches as you need for your pattern. My pattern says to cast on 88 stitches. I'm going to make 44 of these crochet provisional cast on stitches. Here I have finished my cast on stitches. I've double checked that it's 44. The next step is simply to do a few more chain stitches. And then I will cut off my yarn. And you simply pull out the crochet hook. Don't pull it super tight though, because we'll need to undo that later. You're now done with your scrap yarn and your crochet hook. Now we're going to get our regular project needle and you insert it into the first stitch as if to knit. This is the setup row. The next row after this will be our first actual row. take your regular yarn and you just fold it in half, and then you put the fold over your right needle like usual. You knit that stitch. Then you can set up your yarn in your hand ready to work. On this setup row, you're going to knit one and then yarn over. So yarn overs are counterclockwise like usual. You just wrap the yarn around and that's it. And then you knit the next stitch. Yarn over, knit one. Yarn over, knit one. Just like that all the way across. Here we are in the last few stitches. Okay, now we're done with that extra cast on needle. My next step is to spread all the stitches around. And right here is why we use that huge needle, because otherwise, now we've created 2 stitches for every one. And if you didn't have some extra give in that crochet provisional row, you can't really get them all squished around your circle. So now I've got them all laid out. It's very important to stop and look and make sure that that crochet row, they're all in the center. I'm not twisted up at all. Okay, that's critical. So we're back to the beginning. One thing to check here is to make sure that that very first stitch, that's the one you put on by making it a U and you slipped it over your right needle. Make sure that it's not twisted. This is the easy time to fix that if you needed to do so. Looks like mine is correct. Remember, it should be like this with the stitch coming to the right in front of the needle. Last thing we need to do is that final yarn over, and then we're going to place the stitch marker on, and then we're going to join to the next row. And this is now your first row. Your first stitch is a knit stitch. You can try to tug everything a little bit so that there's not a lot of gap in that first stitch. From here, for this row, the way you do it is after you do one knit stitch, then you pull the yarn forward, so it's in the front, and you slip the next stitch with the yarn in front. Then you move the yarn to the back and you knit one, and you move the yarn to the front and you slip one. So basically every stitch that you knit on the last row, you're going to knit on this row. And then every one that you did a yarn over on that row, you're going to slip. You have to slip with the yarn in front. And then you just start scooching your stitches around so that they're all available where you need them. All right, so as I'm nearing the end of my row 1, it's good to stop and check and make sure you aren't twisted at all. So again, your little provisional crochet loops are all in the center of the circle. Nothing is twisted around. So I slipped my stitch marker. It was here. I just slipped it over to the right. And I'm ready for row 2. Row 2, you're going to, for the first stitch, you hold the yarn in the back, but you just slip the stitch over. Then you move the yarn to the front and you purl the next stitch. Okay? And you repeat that. So yarn to the back, slip, yarn to the front, purl. And you now do that all the way around. Yarn to the back. Sometimes when the yarn is in the back, there are different ways to slip, but you're just going to stick the needle right in and pull the stitch over. Now, as we're coming back to the stitch marker again, row 3 is just like row 1. So in row 1, we knit the first stitch and then pull the yarn to the front, slip the next stitch, pull the yarn to the back, knit a stitch, pull the yarn to the front, slip a stitch, all the way around. All right, so now we've finished row 3. Row 4 is just like row 2, and then we are done with the setup. So row 2, you remember, we put the yarn at the back, slip the first stitch, move the yarn to the front, and purl a stitch. Yarn to the back, slip one, yarn to the front, purl one, all the way around. Now we are back around once more. I'm going to slip my stitch marker, and then I'm just going to knit one so that my stitch marker doesn't fall off. It's going to hold my place. And now we can come back in and we can take off that provisional cast on row. So one of your 2 ends will have a knot. You want to start with the other end and just untie it. Maybe use a needle to help pull that out if you need to. And then it should just unzip all the way around. You keep pulling from that same thread. Oops, it's stuck right there. And then at the end, it should just let you. I had to pull on that piece with the knot for like a second. I think the slip knot might be just a little bit caught. You can undo that one space where the slip knot was. I'm actually going to cut off that piece where the knot was. Now we can just pull it all the way out. And now you have your beautiful cast on, and you can see how it looks like it just starts from nothing. Now it is time to move to your 1x1 rib. Everything we've done so far counts as 2 rows of 1x1 rib. Even though we've done cast on row, setup row, 4 rows, all of that counts as 2 rows. So remember, I did my 1 knit stitch, and now I'm going to purl. So it's knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 for as many rows as your pattern says. This is what it looks like after you have unzipped it, and then keep going with your knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. You can see that it all just rolls into itself and is a very beautiful stitch. As a final note, it is possible to knit this using the magic loop method on the Cushion of Joy website, where you use 2 different knitting needles and 2 different sets of circular needles. And so you would join the second needle after one of the yarn overs. So when you start the knit stitch would be the first stitch on the other set of needles. So that also is an option. That is everything you need to know. You can see that it was a lot of stitches and a lot of steps to get to this point, but it's so beautiful. I really think that it's worth it, and really just stretchy and lovely.